Hello and welcome back to this video, and we dive even deeper into time intelligence now. And we want to dive or learn how we can apply cumulative sales, so running total sales in Power BI. This means that we are interested not only in a specific period here, for instance January 2019 and their total sales numbers. What we'd like to see instead is we would like to see all the sales up to a point. So for instance in February 2019 we'd like to see not the 989,000, but actually the sum of those two. So then around 2 point something million. And for March, we'd like to see the sum of the first 3 months, and so on. And this will then accumulate across all the other months as well. So how can we do this? Well, we can write a more advanced DAX calculation and apply additional and new functionalities to create exactly this behavior. So let me actually first maybe Control-C to copy this table, just to be efficient, and press plus symbol here and paste this table in here. I like to do this because this time I'd like to remove a few measures here. We don't need the total sales last year, those two, as well as we don't need the total sales last year here. All I want to have is my total sales number as well as here the year-month combination. And again, I'm referring to a table to explain it because I think it's most easiest to see actually what happens in here. So here I'd like to actually double click on here and say time intelligence DAX, okay, just to name this properly. Then I go to my new page here and I press Control S to save it, just to make sure that even if my Power BI file would crash now, I still keep my progress. Okay, so that's done. Now I like to right click on my measures table to create a new measure. Now I say new measure in here, and then I simply wait until the window opens, and here we go, and now we can define our measure. Now this measure will be a little bit more advanced and we need to think about what it does, but let me try to explain you what we do. So we say here this will be our cumulative sales, okay? So I say cum sales. I name this like that. Of course you can give it another, say it's like running total sales, anything you want. So I say it's equal to, and now I'd like to calculate something, because remember, what do we need to do? We need to modify the filter context. So even there, we need to modify this March 2019 because we do not want to have the sales for March 2019 here. We would like to have the sales for all the months, including March 2019. So basically the sum of the first 3 months, or in April the first 4 months, and so on, right? So that is why there's also a change in the filter context, because otherwise, if we keep the current filter context like it is, currently April 2019 here, then we'd also only get this number. But we need a sum of all these numbers. That is why in the calculate, we need to change the filter context. So this means that we referring to calculate, as I said, the most often probably used function as well as the most powerful function, because it allows us, whatever kind of visual we have, we can change the filter context. So we need to give it an expression. We will go with the total sales because it's the number we currently use. Total sales. Here we go. And then we need to give it a filter. And this filter here now needs some kind of modified context, right? So a modified filter context. So we can use another function which is a so-called filter function. Filter. Here the filter function itself needs a table and returns a filter table. So our filter table, just think about that a minute. Our filter table will contain all the year-month combinations basically up to a specific point, including this point. So for instance for March, it will contain simply a table of the first 3 entries. For April, for the first 4 entries up here, and so on. So that is why we need to give it a table, and the table will be the dates table. However, we need to also ensure that when we give it a table here, which should be filtered by our filter expression, we need to make sure that this table, which we insert here, is not filtered by the visual at all. So that is why we can say we would like to have all selected. So this all selected function, just read what it does actually. It needs a table name or a column name, and then it simply, as you see here, it simply returns all the rows in a table or all the values in a column, ignoring any filters that might have been applied inside the query, but keeping filters that come from outside. So I'm simply referring to that. It's a little bit at first confusing, of course, when you read first, so no matter about that, don't worry. All you put in here is the dates table one more time. Dates table date, so this column here. So this is it, what you want. And then here as our filter function here, we simply say that the dates table date, dates table, and we don't get it here, just a second, because we have closed all selected. It's actually fine, but we need a fixed expression for the table, so here we go, dates table date. So here, the dates table date is less or equal to the maximum of the dates table date. So dates table date, here we go, this one here. Then I can close this, and I can close my parentheses here also for the filter function, and then I also need to close it one more time for the calculate. Okay, so here we go, and let's actually press enter and see what we get at first. Okay, so we do it like that, press enter, and then here we got the cumulative sales. So let's actually untick this one here, go back to our table, select our cumulative sales number here, and also switch this to a dollar amount so we can compare it better. Okay, and then I click on this table and say I'd like to see my cumulative sales. I can tick this here, and now I get numbers in here. And let's actually take a look what these numbers look like. Well, the first one here for January is exactly the same as we had for the normal total sales, right? But then let's check out the February numbers, this number here. So what is that? Well, if you add those two numbers together, January and February, you will see that you will get exactly the number we see here, the 2.014 million. If you now add the March data next to it, you will get the 2.931 million, and so on. And at the end, if you scroll down, you will see that here, at the last entry, we got exactly those 25,661,209, which is the total sales down there as well. So we simply accumulate the sales here for all the periods in our date dimension currently. So that is exactly what happens. So we can see that our formula here, our measure, is correct. So it simply adds up the sales, including the specific month we are currently on. So that's fine. So let's actually check this measure one more time. So that's what it looks like. And what is this actually doing? Let's actually try to understand what this measure does. So it is using the calculate function. So we already know, okay, it's modifying the context, the filter context. So it's not taking into account a specific year-month combination. All right. So how does it modify this filter context? Well, this is where the second part comes into place. So we want to modify the filter context for an expression for the total sales. So we're ignoring what we have here in the table. Then we give it here a new table. So always, also, I haven't mentioned it so far, the second argument in the calculate function always returns a table. So this second argument, no matter what we use, also for the date add function as well as for the same period last function, these functions always return tables. And that means that the calculate itself evaluates the specific expression, in our case our total sales measure, in a new context, and this new context, which we use here as a second argument, is a table. So it does not take into account the current visual, it simply takes into account the new table, and within this table, this number gets evaluated. This is the idea behind calculate and modifying the context. So the new table is a filter table, so we at first give it all the dates table, so that simply means this all selected dates table at first, this first argument here, simply returns our complete dates table. So this, you can think about this first part as simply a copy of our complete dates table. So it contains all the dates starting from January 2019 up to the last entry, so December in 2021. This is what we get here. But then we say we want like to filter this table, so the complete dates table, which we get here, we use the filter function to filter this table based on an expression, a new argument. And this new argument expression is this one here. So we make sure that we take into account all the dates tables, so all the dates from the dates table, but then we filter this dates columns back by this expression. And this expression refers to the specific date column in this date table, and this should be less or equal, and this is where this is a little bit confusing, but this is something you need to understand, and simply just take it now as it is and try to get this into your head, because this is what I had to do at the first time. Because this maximum here, this maximum dates table date, this again is referring to each entry we have in this table, in the view itself, so in our visualization. So you might think about that at the following way. Please calculate the total sales, use in this first expression the complete dates table date, but then filter all the dates you have in the whole model, filter them back down to ensure that the date itself is less or equal to the maximum date, and this maximum date here is referring to each entry you have here. So that means, for instance, for June 2019, this maximum date is June 2019, and so we filter our complete sales table to all the dates here, this first part, who are less or equal to June 2019, which is this value here. For instance, this one here. And this is how we get this filter dates table, so all the dates up to the specific row we have in the table. And this is how we can then calculate simply the sum of the total sales up to this point, including this point. So I know this is really difficult to understand, at least at the beginning when you heard it first, but this is how that works. So modifying the context using calculate, an expression should be evaluated, which is total sales. The new context is a new table, which is a filter table of the complete dates table. That is why we're using all select here. So give us the complete dates table, but then filter this table in a way that the date column in the table itself, this here is referring to the date table itself, which you have here, this all selected, and make sure that this date is less or equal, the second part here, to the maximum date we have in the visual. For instance, August 2019, or as I said before, June 2019, and so on. And that's how that expression works. And because we ensure this in this new context, evaluate the total sales in this new context, that is why we get exactly the behavior which we wanted to have, which is simply a cumulative sum, so a running total sum across all the months, across all the years. Okay? So that's it for this video. Hopefully you understood what we are trying to do or what we did here, and I just want to encourage you, try it out yourself, use the measure yourself and play around with it. And yeah, that's it for this video. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, best guys.